Now when we are going to draw architecture, we need to know the basics of how a building is put together. And all you need to really look at is the shape, general shapes, because all buildings are just shapes put together. For example, in this picture, now this is a picture we're going to, or the building we're going to draw today. It's not going to be a full drawing, it's just going to have the shape and everything to get it, the basics down on paper. But this building here, what is it? Yes, it's a farmhouse. But first thing we need to look at is the shape. What shape is it? Well, we can see that it is, forget this bit, it's just the main farmhouse. We can see that it is a rectangle, one big rectangle. Now if we look at this again, we see we've got a roof. So now if you look at it, we've got one rectangle, one large rectangle, and then on top of it we have a small rectangle. Two rectangles on top of each other will make up a building. Now if you look at this bit, this little extension, we have, I know the tree's in the way, but we'll just zoom it a bit. We have here, it's more of a complicated shape, but when you look at it, if we draw a line across there, we have a rectangle, another rectangle, but on top of this rectangle, to make the roof up, we have a triangle. So that's all you need to really look at to understand the structure of this building. A rectangle, the triangle on top, you get yourself a little outhouse. Now when you draw things like this, you don't have to think of it as one shape with a pointy on the top. You can put it down, break it down into two shapes. This first, you get that right, then you can work on the triangle to make the roof. And if you're careful, everything will work out. This is a rectangle for this. Now if it were like a little cottage, another type of cottage, say that only goes to here, then of course you would have, it would be a square, roughly a square with a rectangle on the top. Other shapes you can get, for example, we can have, for example, something like that, and we have like a dome on the top. Again, what is this? It's basically a semicircle. If you put that like that, when you do a dome, if you do a circle like that, get right, and then it's easier to get the shape that way. Put the line through it, but it's a semicircle. And where do you find semicircles or architecture like this? You find it in Venice. Plenty of it there. So all buildings, if you just sit and observe them and work out, that's a triangle, or that's a rectangle, that's a square, that's a rectangle on top of the square. We'll just go to this. So we got our square, if it was this size, our rectangle on the top, and then we have another rectangle on the roof. It's not a chimney pot. When you draw this in, you're not drawing a chimney pot, you're just drawing a rectangle. You can make it into a chimney pot later on. Similarly, the windows, they're not windows when you put them in, they are merely rectangles. There's another rectangle, the door's a rectangle. The bottom windows are rectangles, even slightly squished up, but they're still more of a rectangle. They're not a square, they're just ever so slightly a rectangle. So this is all you really need to do when you're looking at architecture. If you're not sure, sit down, look at the building, observe the building for 5-10 minutes and work out the shapes, all the different shapes. And when you do that, you find you've got a far better understanding and it'll be much more easier to actually draw. Now, the second thing we've got to think about when we draw an architecture is the size. Now, what I mean about the size is the measurements. We have to get measurements. If we draw something, so if we draw this, we have to get this in proportion. Otherwise, it's not going to look right. Now, if we draw a tree, yes, this tree's got shape, it's got size, but it doesn't really matter if it's not exact because it's just a tree. A tree's going to look like a tree no matter what. But if you're drawing a building, especially if it's a well-known building, if you get the sizing wrong, the scale, then it's going to look wrong. And people will see this and there's something not right with that building. I don't know where it is, but it's just something not right with it. So that's another very important thing. We've got to get the measurements right. And again, it's very easy to get measurements. There's a few ways we can do it. First off, if you're out in the field, if you were standing here looking at this, then this is why you see artists with their pencils or pens and they put arm's length and they we'll do it that way because it's not long enough. Say for example, put on the roof and they put the thumb down and then they'll put it on the paper and they'll work out measurements that way, and they'll work it out like that. That's out in the field. Now in the studio, if you've taken a photograph like this is, in the studio, there's two different ways you can do this. Both easy, but the second way I'm going to show you is a lot easier and a lot more quicker than the first. So let's basically draw this building out using measurements. So here is a piece of paper. See, it's not very large, probably A5. This is the picture. This paper is A4. So what we need to do, we want to draw this onto this piece of paper. We need to know how large we want this farmhouse to be on this paper. Do we want it to be very small in the picture and have more of like the environment around it, like trees and whatnot? Or do we want it larger? Cut the trees out and just have more of, say, the house itself and this tree. We're not really bothered about this bit. We're not bothered about these bits down here. We just want a study of the building itself. But what we've got to do, we've got to decide on how large to put this. So the way we can do that, so what we need to do on this is to, best off is to measure the height to the length, or how many times does the length go into the height. So what we need to do here is easier. We just get a piece of paper or a piece of card and then we just put it up like this. So there's the top of the roof, and we're not going to bother about this. We're just going to look at the main whole shape. And there's the bottom of the farmhouse. Now there's a hedge in the way, so that will go about here. So there is the height of that cottage. So what we need to do, now we've got the height, we put it along the base, and then we count up how many times does the height go into the length. Well, there's one, so there's one, so we put a little mark there, one. There's the edge of the house, so that would go about there. So what's that on there. So what I'm going to do, that's the main height, so I'm just going to make a little mark. So I've just halved that, so there's half the height of the building. So now we can see that was 1.5, and that's where the building ends. So it's just a little bit more than 1.5 times the height. So now we know that, we go to our paper and say, right, we say we're just going to make a line there. The first line is arbitrary, doesn't matter, it's just a line. So right, so now we've got the line, we do the same thing we've just did on this part. We take a mark, there you go, that's halfway, so there you go, there's the full height. So then we go 1, there's a half, so just about there, and that would be your building. Yeah, we can see that on the camera. So there you go, there's the building. Now that building is in proportion, but you look at it and you say, well, no, that's not right, that's way too small, I want a much bigger. So okay, remember this line was just arbitrary, it's a starting point. So if you, to make this larger, you just increase the line up, so that's now the height. So we just go back here, we make a fresh line. Now, just so we don't get ourselves all confused, and I'm rubbing my lines out here, and that's not good. So there's now the new height. We shall just again put a little line somewhere there, roughly halfway, and then you do it again. So there's 1, 1.5, and so that was about there. So now with this extended line, this is now the size of the building. So it's gone from this to this. Now you may say, you know what, that's perfect, because we can put this little annex on there, which would go to make it maybe to about there, somewhere around there, and that would fill the paper up lovely. I've got a little bit of room for the bushes, a bit of the tree there, I've got some bushes there which we can put in. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. But if it wasn't, you said I wanted it a little bit bigger, then again you make this line a bit higher, a bit taller, remeasure that, and then 1.5, a little bit to start. No, that would maybe bring it up to there. And you just do that. If we wanted smaller, a little bit, that was a little bit too large, then you just reduce the height a little bit, make a new measurement, and 1.5, just over 1.5. That will make a touch smaller, and you just basically work like that with this initial line until you get the size you want. So that size is okay for me. So that's a whole building, the whole fabric of the building. But we can see we've got a roof, another rectangle on top of a rectangle. So now we need to know, where do we put that roof line? Is it there? Is it there? Is it there? Who knows? So what we can do is we can go back to our measurement. Let's see get the side right, of course. So that's our measurement. So there's the top of the roof, there's the base. So that was about halfway between the two. So where does this measurement come? That goes there. So roughly the roof is about halfway between there. So we've got that. So we go back to this. That's our measurement. Top of the roof, bottom. There's the halfway mark. So we now know that this roof is about halfway. So that's halfway. So it's about maybe something like around there. And so we just put a line going across there. And that is our roof. So now we've got our main building, just the outline, all correct. If we want, we can put this in. So what is this? As we've already seen, it's just another rectangle with a triangle on the top. So we can do this in two parts. So what's the measurement? We've got our little measuring stick here. So again, we go to this part there, and then we don't have to go across there, because we know this measurement's correct to that. So we can do it just on the right hand side of this building. Now we can see on this that the end of this building is not flush against this wall. It's a little bit in, because it comes down and attaches to the wall there. So what we can do, we'll just put it on that line, and we'll have a look. So there's a full height measurement, there's the halfway between the full height measurement, and there is the end of this little annex. So that's about, what's that? So again, that's that. We'll go put a little mark there it's about there actually, to half this, just so it makes the resolution a little bit easier to judge this distances. So that's halfway of that. That's just across the halfway mark. So we go to this. We'll go about there, because that's as I said, the building, this annex, that goes about there, starts about there. So we start there. There's the height of the building. We'll just put a little mark, so that's halfway. And we saw that in the previous measurement was about there. I mean, it doesn't have to be 100%. You can get 99% easy. So that's that. We'll just rub that out. There we go. And that is the length of this building here. But now the height. So like I said, we're going to do this in two stages, because we're just looking at simple shapes. Now it's much more complicated. If you look at this, that's a rectangle with it's a box with a point on. No, we'll do the rectangle first, and then put the triangle on top. So we need to know the height. So again, because we're on our source material, we do go to our source measurement, and we'll just put that there, right, and we'll see. So there's the full measurement. There we go. There's a full measurement. That's about halfway of that measurement. That's about halfway of that bit. And let's see. So from the top of there to the bottom of there, it's just a little bit over half. So we go back to this. So there's the full measurement. Put that on the base. There's halfway, and then the height of that was about there. So we'll just sort of put that like so. Now that is our rectangle. Now we got the rectangle, we can work out the height of this triangle. Now how do we do, what's the best to do that? Well, simply this is easy to do. We just sort of look at the middle. That's about the middle. And you put a line up, and that'll go through should go through the point of the roof. So we just need to know the measurement of between that point and that point. So once again, back to our measurement. There you go. We go there, put that on the tip of that roof. There's our halfway mark. Well, that's our halfway mark. That's a halfway mark of the first sector. And that, what I'll do it this way instead because it's easier to show you. I'll do it from the bottom and go up the top. It's easy for the camera. So there's the bottom. We need to go all the way up to that point. So there's a full measurement. There's halfway, and that's full measurement. And we can see that the apex of this roof is just a little bit above halfway. So we go back. We go to this measurement. So we're on our center line. There's halfway. So it was just a little bit above, something like that. We put a little dot, and then all we need to do here is really join the two, just like a dot to dot kiddies puzzle book. And that's that. So we have that. Looking pretty good. So just using basic measurements, we now have all of the structure of the building, the basic structure all complete. So all we need to do now would be to measure within the rectangle to position the windows. And it's exactly the same thing. Now, of course, windows look just rectangle, rectangle, rectangle. They're just rectangles, so think of the shape. So what we'll do, we find out first how far into the house is the left hand side of this window. So again, we just go to our main measurement, and we will put it right on the edge of the building, and there's a halfway mark, full mark. There's a halfway. There's halfway of this first sector. So we can see this is just a little bit to the right or further across than halfway. So you go to our setting here. There's halfway, and then just a little bit. That's the first bit of our window. Go back. We need to know this side now. So how wide is this window? So again, we can just go back here. Right. Full, half of the sector. That's our little mark for this. So the other side of the window, we can see, we can make a visual determine, there's halfway, what the gap is. So we go back to this. There's our halfway mark. Get that's about there. So it's roughly about like that. Now for the height, we can see here there's a tiny little gap between under the eaves. We don't need to measure that, so we know that's going to be something like that. But we need to know the height of this window now. So once again, easy peasy lemon squeezy, as they say. We'll just go to the eaves of the roof there, and then we just look down at the bottom, and there you go. There's our halfway mark in the first sector, pretty much bang on. So we go around this one. There's our halfway mark on this first sector, so it's there. So we'll just put that there, put that there. So there is our first window. The other windows, same thing. Now, one thing about the windows, which makes it easier, is that all the windows are going to be equal on the top, underneath the eaves. So we could put just a little line going across there. It would help if the roof was a little bit straight, but that's just freehand. Forget about that bit. So there's a line, and the bottom is also going to be equal. So there you go, you've got the height. So all we need to know is where's the second window, where is the third window, where do you position them, and you just do exactly the same thing. You go across. Okay, first sector, halfway first sector, that's a true halfway. First halfway the second sector, and it's just right of that. So halfway the first sector, halfway the second sector, it was just right to that, which is about, well, actually, you look at that, it's virtually spot on. And you would do that there. Now for the width, well, the windows are the same, so you could actually just put a little mark there. That's that. And very probably the windows should be equal spacing. So again, you could just put your measuring device between these two, put a little mark, and then do that, and there we have our windows. And as for the bottom, you do exactly the same. Put that on there. We don't have to do the full roof, just do it under the eaves. And then first sector, middle, it's just under the middle. First sector, middle, just under the middle, so it's about there. And then, well, you can't actually see the bottom of the window and this bit. But as for the length, well, if you put a line just going up there, as you can see I've done there and up there, we can see where the window would be. So it's a little bit wider than there, so there, and maybe that was a bit wider in this general side. So that will go down there somewhere. You can't see because there is basically a hedge going down at an angle like that, so it's covering up this window here. So you would do that there. This window is level with that, so you would just, again, what you did with the windows, just something like that. We can work out where this window is by looking at this window, and it's the same. If you just put a mark there, this side is just a bit to the right of this window frame, window side, and that just a bit to the left of that. So a little bit to the left of that, a little bit to the right of that. That's going to be sort of equal, something like that. And then you would do the same to put the door in. Just measure. You can see the door. If you put a line going up there, it's virtually, not exactly, but it's just a tiniest little bit narrower, the door, than the window. And this part here is a little bit higher than that window, so that will go there, that will, that like that, and you would have something like that. So just with the one general measurement on your source material, you can you've got this blueprint pretty well, 99, at least 99% accurate. It might not be fully accurate, but who cares? It's good enough for what you would want. If this was a well-known, recognized building, then yes, you would know. People would know it. Now the only other thing with this would be the roof, because see, the roof is just a rectangle. The roof isn't a rectangle here, it goes in ever so slightly. So on this, you can see, you don't have to do any measurements. You can see it's just a very, very slight angle. So something like that. And this, even though it's obscured by the tree, if you put this level like so, don't have it like that, try and get it level. You can put your pencil or pen or whatever on this angle here, like so, and then very carefully, without moving your hand, very carefully lift up, go across, put down, make a mental note of where the intersection is here, which is about there, and then just make that like so. And then what you have is your roof. You do the same with the chimney, just measure it, easy, I've just shown you. And that is your basic house. So that's how you can measure any piece of architecture and get in the studio using a little bit of card, do some basic measurements, and you can get a really nice, accurate drawing. Now, the other way you can do what I've just done, what I've just shown you, but I think much easier, is by using a tool like this. This is a proportional scale divider, and all this is two pieces of plastic with a lot of holes in and a little securing pin, which you can move this to anywhere you like. Just lock it in, and what that will do, it will give you different scales to either enlarge or subtract sizes. Or if you've got something, say you've got something A4 and you're going to transfer it on an A4 paper, then all you really need to do is use just one end and use that one end, the same end, for all the measurements. If you've got to scale up or scale down, and with this case, this is A4, this is A5, we need to scale down. So what we need to do here is the scale down. We use this end to do the measurements on the source device, the source paper, the photograph, and then to transfer it onto our paper you use the other end. So for example, say if you've got a ruler, say it's 1 square inch. There you go, there's 1 square inch. We'll do it on this paper here. So there's 1 square inch using this end, but when you turn it round, when you turn it round, 1 square inch on this end is much smaller. Now that depends on where you put this locking pin. If we put it further, say this way, do 1 square inch again, turn it round, and with the reduction side, 1 square inch is now even smaller, and you can get it down. If you put it further down this way, it'll be 1 square inch will be absolutely tiny. If you do it this way, then it'll get larger. So that's basically how a proportional scale divider works. So to get this here onto here in a reduced format, 2 things we need to do. Well, 1 thing, but on both papers. Now forget about all these other lines. The main lines we need to put a reference line across here, and you can put it anywhere, but I usually always put it, I'll measure the photograph and half it, and then I put a line down there, and I'll do the same. I measure the height, half it, and then I put a line across, so you've got a cross. And then you do the same here, measure half, so you've got you both a reference cross. And so we need to get this at a reasonable scale on this piece of paper. We don't want it too big, we don't want it too small. So what we need to do here is to go here from the center of our cross to the edge of the building. Now careful not to move this so it doesn't ruin the scale. Right, so center cross, so there is the side of our building. We do the same with this side, center cross to the side of the other side of the building, and there we go. So we can instantly see that this is just way too small. We would like it, this is the sort of same size paper as this, so we would like it something like this, but you see it's too much in the distance. You're going to have too much surrounding area. So what do? Well, simply you take the pin out. Remember, if you put it this way, it makes it smaller. If you put it this way, it makes it larger. So we'll just we'll try there. So it's all trial and error. So we put that there, and we'll do it again. So again with the long end, send across to the end, send across to the end. So now we've got that, and we do the same again, send across to the other end, careful not to move it, and there we go, we put that there. Now if we just rub these lines out, we can see that is now for this size paper, that's a much more usable, workable size. So I'm happy with that. So that's our width done. So now for the height, we do the same thing. So I'm just going to do this again. One rectangle, two rectangles on top of each other. But I'm going to deal with this one just as this rectangle first. The roof rectangle I'm not going to bother with, I'll do that later. So we need the height of this building now. So middle point is always our reference point, the long end, and we will just one there and just put that under the eaves like so, and then the short end we make a little mark there. So that is now underneath the eaves, and now we get the rest of the height. So once again, our middle point, we go down, open it up to get to the bottom of the building. Careful not to move it, we don't want to open it or close it to ruin our measurement. Put that there, middle point, there we go. And that now a bit wonky and scruffy, but that is now our building in perfect proportion. Now we do the roof. Same thing. We could use it from our middle point, or we could do it from the roof because we know this is correct. But as we're using the middle point here as our main reference, we'll do it from the middle point, just for continuity. So middle point, open it up so it's on the roof. Move it round, careful, careful. Middle point. There's the roof, and the roof again. At this point in time, we just have to do the roof as a rectangle. So that's that. Now for this, again, simplicity. Now with it, we don't have to use our middle point anymore because we already have the base of this building here. So we can use this point here where it intersects the line. We just use that point to get our measurement. So on that line, we just open it up until we get to that bit there. Oop. Yeah, that's right. Turn it round from there, and we know from previous, I'll just enlarge that a bit, we know from previous that bit of wall there, that bit of the house, this annex, is not flush against this wall, it's in a little bit, and using this measurement we can see it goes in, so that's correct, that's worked. Again, now we want this end. Now we could just go by that and do it that way because we've now got, or you could go by there again, our reference point, and then open these up so you get to the right hand side of that. So we'll do it that way again. Careful. We put that on our reference point, make a little dot there, and then put that across there. Now that is the height, the length of this building here. Now we got the height of this little rectangle. We've got this here, so all we need to do is to put these on the bottom, that on the top of our rectangle, and I've just moved them. This is where you've got to be very careful with things like this. If you do a measurement and you just move them slightly, then this end is going to be way out. So you've got to be very careful. So we'll just do that again. Okay, that's okay. Gently. You put that here. Make a little mark. Draw that in. Like so. We'll just rub this little line out there because we don't need that. We don't have invisible walls. Right, that's that. And then we need the triangle on the top. Now once again, what we can do, just like this one, we will just visually make a mark. That's about halfway. If you really want to make sure, you could just do that. That'll do. And then you'll put a line up, and then all we need to do here is put a line from the bottom. I'll put the pointer, at the base of the building to the apex of that roof. So there's our measurement. We turn it round, put that there, make a little mark there, and then there's our little annex, all drawn in to scale. And finally, again, it's windows. Same thing. Now, again, we can do this two ways. We can either make a measurement from here across, or from here across to there. But as we know that we've already done the measurements, everything's correct. So we could just do it, we'll just do it from there to there. So on the side of the building, close the prongs up until you get to the edge of that. Turn it around, put that mark there, and there you go. There's our first window. Now we know that's a little gap between the eaves. Right, so that's that. We'll get the height of the window. So once again, that there, put the bottom prong on the bottom, carefully put it that way, and well, look at that, I'm spot on. And then all we need to do here is the width. So window frame to window frame, just make a little mark, and then just as the kiddies' little drawing books, dot to dots, just dot those together. And for the other windows, well, we can see, and this just so happens, this side of the window is basically bang on our mark, our crosshair. So what we'll do here is we'll measure that. Actually, no, we'll do it this way, from that side of the window to that side of the window, and then move it over that side of the window to that, and you get that, and you go across, and you just do the same with that. It's about there. So I know it's only rough and ready. Normally you'd be using a ruler to do this. And then so you've got your windows in, and then you do exactly the same for these bottom windows. You know, you could from that line down to the top of the window, from that line down to the top of the window. And once again, what we know, we could just extend that line, extend that, and that would be roughly the size of that, the width of that window. Now once again, you've got this this hedge that goes down and you can't actually see anyway, so and you would do the same sort of measurement for that window. But as we know before, if you put a line across there, you put a line across there, these are equal, the same height, and this window here, if we put a mark there and a mark there, as we know that this window is slightly larger than this one, so we put that there, put a line there, make our little, and then there's a window there, and then for the door, we know, because we've got all of this worked out, we can just visually take our measurement from that point there to there, that point there to there, is roughly around the width of that window. This part of the door, if you put it across, is just below that, so if you just put a mark just below there, So that would be something like that. And then the door would go around somewhere like that. And then the roof, we've already done the roof. You measure a chimney. And then that is your house. From your reference photograph onto your paper, reduced, using a proportional scale divider, and doing it this way, you probably have found was a damn sight quicker than doing it this way, using little measurements and half to half and half to half. 6 and 2/3 really. I mean, you get both methods get the job done. But in my opinion, if you're going to do something like this and you're going to do it in the studio, especially if it's from a photograph, get yourself a set of proportional scale dividers. These things you can get them off eBay. They're about, I don't know, they're about between £4 to £6, depends on where you go. Depends on what seller's selling them. But these are absolutely invaluable for scaling up or scaling down. And there, with a little bit of tonal values, a bit of striating, some hatch marks with a pen just to simulate some tiles, etc. That's our finished little building compared to the original to what we've got there. Pretty good considering the time it took to do. So I hope that's given any beginners a little bit of help and some confidence to try and draw architecture. As you can see, it's not that difficult. But rule 1, think of the shapes, look for the shapes. Even if you've got to sit there for 5-10 minutes, look for the shapes and how the shapes connect. 2, look at the size, the measurements. How much does one side measure up to the other side? So how much the height to the length, if you do it that way. But I would suggest you get yourself some proportional scale dividers and use those, because they are infinitely better than doing it the method with a bit of card. Now if you enjoyed this little demonstration and want to see some more, then please subscribe, because subscribing does help the channel. And it's a new channel, so it is very difficult to get it picked up off the ground, so subscriptions do help. Also, put a comment in the comments. It all helps. So until next time, I'll say goodbye. So goodbye.